All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again on session two of our cybersecurity essentials. It used to say for business leaders, but we changed it to business users because I do believe the content that we're going through here today is relevant for everybody who is, depending on technology to go through their day-to-day work life. We already talked a little bit. We are recording this session, so it'll be available to you later on as well. If you have any questions, please put them in either the chat or the Q&A, and I'll do my best to get on and help answer those. So as we did last time, we start off and we just share what we call our brand commitment. This is essentially our promise that we make to our clients to help them understand that we are more than just help desk or tech support or whatever the traditional view of IT is. But we truly believe that the reason that you invest in technology is because you want to use it as a tool to help you achieve your business goals, to overcome business challenges, and that ultimately every organization that we work with has different objectives and different challenges, so the technology strategy needs to be different as well. All of that aside, the reason we're here today is to talk about cybersecurity. And in our last session, we talked very briefly at the end about NIST, the NIST cybersecurity framework. We can see across here, the important parts of it are this idea of breaking up the risks that technology introduces into our businesses into activities that we can undertake to reduce the exposure and the impact should something occur. So the reason that this is important is because today we're going to be talking about these categories. So these five, so identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We can see that a couple of these identify and protect are considered to be proactive concepts. Detect is neither proactive or reactive. It's kind of just reporting, what is. And then respond and recover are reactive activities. So those five categories are the things to keep in mind as we go through our information today. The other item that we're going to be talking about is what's called the CIS controls. Now, the CIS controls have been designed through collaboration of a number of IT organizations around the world, and really the concept with this is to I regret saying the word simplify because as you'll see it's not simple necessarily, but the intent is to simplify the concepts around cybersecurity so that organizations of all sizes and capability are able to implement these systems to lower their risk in the ongoing battle against cybercrime. We were having a conversation earlier today about one of the things we really like about the CIS controls is that there are only 18 of them. There are 153 safeguards. And to help categorize it, they've taken those and broken them down into three different implementation groups. Each implementation group builds on the other ones. So implementation group one is what they consider basic cyber hygiene. Implementation group two includes all of the items in implementation group one, plus those in implementation group two. This is typically when an organization gets to be a little bit more cyber mature. And then implementation group three is the full meal deal. Typically businesses that are in implementation group three, they are very well funded, large organizations with teams of people focused exclusively on cybersecurity and data management and compliance and all of those types of things. So as we go through the CIS controls today, you'll see us talking about implementation groups. You'll see us talking about NIST categories as well. And yeah, yeah, we'll see how that plays out. So literally today, what we're going to do, we're going to start talking about these 18 CIS controls. And the very first one is an inventory and control of enterprise assets. So when we look at this slide, you'll notice that there is a total of 5 safeguards. 2 of them are in implementation group 1. If you were to implement at implementation group level 2, you would have 4, because there's 2 in group 1, there's 2 in group 2, and in implementation group 3, you would have all 5 of them. We start on each of these, talking about why it's important. You'll see the little slide pop up at the bottom there. This concept that nearly 66% of IT managers have an incomplete record of their IT assets. I can attest that this is, maybe it sounds very simple to people that are on the call, that you should know what technology you have. The reality of it is that in today's world, in my office, I have a Microsoft Surface, I have a scanner, I have a smartphone, I might have a tablet, I've got my firewalls, I've got my wireless access points. And the desire of businesses to make it easy for people to connect and move around and work on multiple devices means that, this fact of many IT managers not having a complete list of their IT assets is 100% true. And so if we don't know about it, we can't secure it, we can't support it, we can't patch it. And so this is a really important one in terms of, as you're developing your cybersecurity, mindset, realizing that everything that's on your network is a point of contact with the outside world. We've seen articles about attacks that have occurred against smart thermometers or thermostats. There have been network-wide or internet-wide outages that have occurred because businesses have not, properly secured their IP camera systems. And so there's a lot of text here. I recognize that. We can see on the right-hand side here that there are 5 safeguards in this particular group. And as we see, 2 of them are in group 1, which are establishing and maintaining detailed enterprise asset inventories. And number 2 is addressing unauthorized assets. So basically what it's saying is that the first 2 steps to upping your security game is to know what you have and get rid of anything that doesn't belong on your network. Now, what we do with a lot of our clients is we look at those devices that are on the network, and we say, maybe we can segment them. Maybe there's one part of the network that is for all of these IoT devices and a separate network that is for all of the private, production items. Numbers 3, 4, and 5 are about really having tools that are scanning your network, that are identifying devices that are connected to it, and providing that information to IT so that they can categorize them and keep track of them. Again, any questions or anything, please throw them into the Q&A. I am just I noticed JP's here, so I'm just upgrading him to a panelist so he can help answer those questions if anything comes up as well. So if step number 1 is to have a list of your hardware, step number 2 is about the software side. Now, again, we talk about the complexity and the challenge of this, and you think that on one computer, we know that our staff need to use Microsoft Office and maybe QuickBooks and Adobe and those other applications. But there are literally hundreds of applications installed on any given computer, and any one of those applications can present risks to the organization. So if you've been on any of our other webinars recently about our client portal, there's a place in there where administrators are able to go in and go to software, and they can see a list of all of the software that's installed on all of the managed computers. The idea with this is that, again, if you know what you have, you know where it is, you can decide how you want to manage it. We want to make sure that staff they have enough flexibility to access the applications that they need, and potentially apply minor patches and those types of things, but not so much that they can install anything that they want. Many of the attacks that you read about that occur around the world are because somebody has followed a link, downloaded an application, or opened a malicious attachment. Because the system didn't have appropriate controls in place to restrict that user's ability to install and manipulate the operating system, it's able to essentially run rampant through the network. So again, we're not going to go through all of them here, but our 7 safeguards in this particular group start off with having an inventory of what we have and ensuring authorized software is currently supported. So this is an interesting one, because what they're saying with this is that if you are not paying a subscription for your software, it will eventually not be patched, it will be insecure, and it will present risk to your business. So none of us like incurring additional costs on our subscriptions and all of that. But those subscriptions that we pay, it does allow the developers of those software packages to continue to support and improve the security and the performance of those systems. Number 3, address unauthorized software. Of course, get rid of the ones that don't need to be there. It's amazing how many times over the years we've found people have applications installed to download pirated video, to share files, to provide remote access to their own system so that they can bypass traditional controls. You'll hear us talk more and more about this as our series goes on, but this is where we need to balance the convenience versus security. I've talked a lot about it over the years that convenience and security are inverse to each other. So as convenience goes up, security goes down, and vice versa. As security goes up, convenience goes down. If your technology in your business is meant as a tool to do the work, we believe security should trump convenience. It does create some headaches and some frustrations as people don't have as much flexibility as they may be used to, but it will help you provide more security down the road. The other items on the safeguards here, utilizing automated software inventory tools just means keeping track, keeping a list up to date, creating an allow list of authorized software, libraries, and scripts are the last 3. And this has been a recommendation that most small and medium businesses previously have been unable to really deliver on. But JP and I, we've been working with some of our software vendors, and I think we've got a pretty good solution on this that we're going to be talking to more of our clients about in the coming months. All right, no questions so far. All right, control number 3 is data protection. We can see that there's a total of 14 safeguards in this category. And, it talks at the bottom here about controlling, identifying, classifying, handling, retaining, and disposing of data. And this has been a really big challenge for businesses as we've grown, as we've gone and worked remotely, because we're creating more data today, in a year than all of humanity has ever produced leading up to this, and it's accelerating. It used to be that, their businesses had processes to organize their data and, delete old stuff because storage was expensive. It's not expensive anymore. And with the speed of connections and data, it's easy to make copies of things into different places. And so things to keep, to be aware of is that there are different levels of risk when it comes to data protection. There's the risk to your business of, what happens if our data gets compromised and we can't access it anymore, which is a different risk than what happens if our data, gets stolen and shared, out in the greater world, or is, accessed inappropriately and used by, a competitor or, a malicious employee or, something along those sides of things. In the nicest possible way, I've said to clients for years, I really don't care about your computer. I care about your data. I want to make sure that it's safe. And so in this one, we can see we've got a great big list of policies and procedures and items that we can do. You'll notice, if you can read these, that a lot of the initial ones are about your internal processes. So establishing and maintaining a data management process. Well, that can be about really defining your folder structures, what information goes where, who has access to it. Establishing and maintaining a data inventory is a regular process of ensuring that the right things are in the right place. Configuring data access control lists. So this is really about users and permissions and those types of things. Then we start getting into some of the technology items. So enforcing data retention. So how long are you keeping information? Where is it stored? How do you, verify that? Securely disposing of your data. So this one here, every time we recycle a computer on behalf of a client, it goes into a bin essentially in our office that is collected by a licensed Alberta electronics recycling company. Everything is smashed, destroyed, taken down to raw materials. However, there are a number of organizations, out and about who will cold call and say, "Hey, we are a computer recycler." Well, that's a different thing. They're not disposing of it. They're now taking that computer, erasing what's on it, and reinstalling. The reason that this is on here is that even after a computer has had a hard drive formatted, the information that was on it can still be accessed using, easily access tools on the internet. And then 3.6 here. This is again one of those items, encrypting data on end user devices, that I would say historically small and medium businesses have not had access and capability to do on a regular basis. However, some of the new technologies through Microsoft Intune, which is part of the Microsoft 365, is giving us better solutions that we can do this. And more so, the concern is typically on devices that are outside of the business's office. But encrypting the data essentially means that if someone were to disassemble your computer and plug the hard drive into something else, can they actually read and access that information? And the idea is you want to make sure that they can't. When we get down into number 7 and on, again, there are a number of items in here that are technology-based, a number that are policy and procedure-based. Anybody have any questions about these ones? I'm not going to go through all of them because they're a little bit more in depth. Okay. Number 4, a secure configuration of enterprise assets and software. We'll see we have 12 safeguards in this category. And This is essentially about making sure that when we install new technology in our business, that it is fully vetted and reviewed and configured and set up to a certain set of standards. The examples that we have on this that are most relevant is that every time we provide a computer or a client acquires a new computer, if you take it out of the box and turn it on, you will notice that right from the factory, it has a whole bunch of software on there that is not useful to you, but has been installed through some kind of licensing agreement that the manufacturer has. It may have default usernames and passwords on that device that need to be changed. It may not have all of the security patches. It may have configuration items that need to be adapted and addressed to meet your specific standard. Now, I try not to overuse the word standards when we're talking about this, but it's really become a big part of how we are adapting to all of these safeguards across our clients. Again, going back to our client portal, we talked about these assessments. The assessments that we do for our clients are based on NIST, they're based on CIS. And when our technicians are reviewing our clients' networks, they're looking and saying, have all default passwords been changed on, network connected devices? Yes or no? And going through all of those things. I mentioned earlier that there was a big attack a couple years ago that literally took out the internet on the whole Eastern Seaboard for a day, and it was initiated by taking over people's IP cameras that the default passwords had not been changed on. So again, we see our 12 controls here, establishing and maintaining a secure configuration process. So this is actually something that we do on behalf of our clients. Every computer that goes into our clients' networks, we go through 2 phases of setup and configuration. If you're ever curious about why does it take so long to set up a computer, this is a big part of it. It then goes into talk about maintaining a secure configuration process for network infrastructure. So network infrastructure is your firewall, your switches, your wireless access points, all of those devices that are connecting your computers together. 10 years ago, those were essentially dumb devices that we just plugged cords into and they lit up or they didn't. Well, now they are miniature servers. They are miniature computers that have software and require patches and all of those types of things. So again, it's a lot more complex today than it used to be. Number 3 is configuring automatic session locking. So this one is relatively straightforward. It's just saying, are you locking the screens on your computers after a certain amount of time of inactivity? Seems pretty straightforward. We have some clients who push back on that, but it is a CIS control. It is highly recommended. We've got a couple in here about firewalls, having a firewall on a server, having firewalls on end user devices. And the firewalls are what are separating the computers from the outside world, the greater risks that are out there on the internet. And so, of course, we want to make sure that those are on there. And then we've got, a little bit of overlap here about securely managing enterprise assets and software. Again, this is talking about making sure that, as an example, your QuickBooks data is only accessible to certain users, that those users have a certain level of permission applied to them. If you have a bigger, enterprise system, that you have different user groups, all of those types of things. Number 7, managing default accounts. Make sure that default usernames and passwords are changed, that they are unique passwords, that they are stored in a secure place. What do we got here? 8, uninstalling, disabling unnecessary services. And then, from here, I think they get a little bit more technically focused around, enforcing certain network configurations and those types of things. Whew. Okay, JP, it is already 3:25. We could probably do one more if we had time, but does anybody have any questions? I know it's a lot of real techie kind of abstract stuff that we're talking about here. Any feedback about if this information is interesting to you, if there's anything you want me to talk, in more detail about as well. And we can unmute you if you'd prefer to talk rather than type. Not seeing anything come up, so maybe I shouldn't talk too much. They're all napping. Yes, Debbie. So Debbie's question is, I assume you'll be assessing our businesses individually. And absolutely. And this is also, I think, one of the big things that we've invested in our process, particularly over the last 18 months, is to recognize that none of these items are a set it and forget it type of thing, right? We don't just lock the front door on the house once and assume that it's locked forever. It needs to be revisited on an ongoing basis. And eventually we'll get to a point where we'll say, you know what, a lock on the front door isn't good enough. We can't have a lock with a key anymore. Now we need to have one with a code. And then one day it'll turn into a biometric thing. And so one of the phrases that we use when we're talking about cybersecurity is that cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. We will never be done cybersecurity. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. I would appreciate feedback if you thought this was useful and valuable. We made it through 4 of there's 14 more. If you would prefer that I go faster next time, if you would prefer I spend more time on them, any of that feedback is great for us to get. Our intention is to provide information that helps you understand a little bit more about how you can help to improve the cybersecurity posture of your business so that you can understand what we're doing, and kind of the framework and the mentality that we use when we're working on our initiatives. And this is a bi-weekly webinar. So every second Tuesday at 3 p.m., we're going to go through this. We've got obviously the other 14 CIS controls that we'd like to go through. And then we'll be developing more content beyond that, probably more tangible. What is this risk? How can you protect yourself? What can you educate your staff and your team about? Yes, PDF handouts. We are working on that right now, just going through the proofreading. Essentially, all of the content that we have in our presentation here, it is already prepared in a PDF booklet format. Of course, it's pretty tech focused, but yes, we can share that with you for sure. All right, I am going to stop the recording.